Meeting of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of Transport and Public Work. The first part of the meeting is going to be a briefing with the Auditor General and the Audit Committee. The meeting will be an in-committee meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Account, would therefore mean it's a confidential meeting and no members of the public are allowed, no members of the media are allowed. After we finish the briefing, we will allow the department to come in, led by the minister and the HOD from the administrative staff. Now, before we may start with the meeting and the presentation, procedural officer, are there any apologies?
Chairperson, yes, it's only from Member Kleho. Member Kleho is unable to attend the meeting due to illness.
Thanks very much, Procedural Officer. With that, then, I'm going to hand over to the Auditor General to start with the report. Over to you, AG.
Transport and Public Works officials are in chair.
No, excellent. Then once again, honorable members, we are now going to start with the open part of the meeting, which is the meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for purposes of deliberating and looking into the annual report of the Department of Transport and Public Work. Also in the annual report, there is also the report of the Auditor General as well as the report of the Audit Committee. This is an open meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Account. That means it is open to members of the public and also to members of the media. After we finish allowing members of the committee as well as members of the provincial legislature that are present in the meeting to ask questions, we will also allow members of the public that are present if they want to ask questions and allow them to ask questions. Now, in starting the meeting, honorable members, can I get an indication, Honorable Minister, are there any opening remarks that you'd like to make?
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, colleagues. Chairperson, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to account to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. I'm very happy to be a political leader of this department. You would know, Chairperson, that is a very complex department with the responsibility of delivering an infrastructure in the entire province, being the custodian of all the properties and also having the responsibility of some entities. We, of course, the HOD will be doing the presentation, but I think it's important for me to just, in my open remarks, say 2 or 3 things. The first thing that I want to say is that this department, as you know, Chairperson and members, is that we have received, the clean audit, which is the work that really has been done by the team under very, very difficult conditions. We are experiencing a number of challenges, given the fact that our fiscus is shrinking, and to strike a balancing act between ensuring that the work of this department is continuing and also the reprioritization exercise in terms of deciding what to do and what not to do is something that's very, very complex and difficult. And that is why I want to thank the dedication of the team, the HOD, for the sterling work that they have been doing. And also, Chairperson, you would know that the HOD and together with this department have been rewarded at the annual event that is normally, held to look at the performance of various departments and provincial departments, which is a clear indication of the work that the HOD and the team are doing, flying the flag of the Western Cape High and making sure that we deliver services. And of course, Chairperson, lastly, I do want to thank the members of the of the SCOPA for really making sure that you keep us on our toes by raising, relevant issues which will ensure good governance. And I think at the last meeting, there were issues that were raised, and we made sure as a department that we go and really go through those issues with a fine-tooth comb so that we come back here and report on the progress that has been made. And I also want to thank the work that has been done by the Internal Audit Committee team that has really assisted us to make sure that we deal with those, concerns that were raised by SCOPA at the last meeting. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Honorable Minister. HOD, are there any opening remarks you'd like to make?
Through you, Chairperson, thank you very much for the opportunity, and good morning to the members of the Public Accounts Committee and the members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament that are part of the meeting. If I may also, through you, Chair, to the MEC, say thank you very much for his comments and appreciation. Certainly from the department's perspective, as is mentioned around the clean audit, I can indicate for both Transport and Public Works as well as the trading entity, as you mentioned, that's part of the department, GMT. We have received our 8th clean audit. DTBW, I can also indicate from a budget point of view, and as is reflected in the documentation, was able to achieve a 99.9% spend on its allocation that had been appropriated through the Provincial Parliament in the year under review. And then, as the Minister's mentioned, aspects around governance, we always work hard to ensure that we comply with the relevant legal prescripts. And certainly, as I think we all acknowledge, there is always room for us to improve on things and better, to be able to innovate in various areas, which started certainly also and continued in the year under review into the year that we have gone into. And then just finally, as I think we would all know, that the 1920 financial year ended in a very difficult space for all of us, in starting to deal with the pandemic across South Africa and in our province. And certainly DTBW was impacted, as were all departments, most especially the Department of Health, and with our attempt then at the back end of the last financial year and continuing into the 2021 financial year to support the Department of Health in any way we can. So I just want to also say thank you very much to the committee for this opportunity. The questions that you ask help us to find areas for improvement, and we welcome the engagement this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honorable members, we are going to do the usual run of the mill. I am now going to allow questions, points of clarities, and well as issues of discussion that you'd like to make. We'll deal with the department's report in terms of its sections. As you know, that we are looking at section C and section E of the report. I will start first with the section C of the report. Are there any questions, point of clarity, of points of discussion on section C? I see the hand of Honorable America is up. Honorable America, Honorable Ngondlo, in that order.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. It will be a remiss of me, Chair, not to extend my absolute delight and congratulations to both the department and the GMT, the outstanding audit result. And I think I've sat through most of the departments this week, and from the outset I could say, you know, having gone through the report and of the department and the entity, it was a pleasure to go through it, because it you know, highlighted very little sort of areas of you know, further scrutiny, but it will be, you know, appropriate to me to ask a few questions for clarity purposes. And here we go. The department, by its very nature, Chair, you know, require a lot of technical skills in terms of delivering on their mandate. And one of the risks that was identified for both GMT as well as the department is its ability to attract, recruit and retain specialized skills, and that is on page 57. So I would like to know, in terms of succession planning, what measures are being put in place to ensure that whatever skills we lose through natural attrition or through possible resignation, what is the department currently doing, not only to retain critical skills, but also to ensure that in the future we'll be able to have those skills available to us to deliver on the mandate. And secondly, Chair, another risk that the department has identified is globally in terms of the general economic climate and deterioration as a result of the pandemic. And the department specifically highlight in struggling industries in the environment in which they operate. Now, largely, the department renders services to clients which are mostly government departments. And perhaps, if I, have a broader view of the identification of that risk, I may be of the opinion that industries in the external environment that render services to the department may experience economic hardship, and that would impact on the department to deliver the service that they're supposed to. Perhaps the HOD chair could provide more clarity in terms of the identification of that specific risk. And furthermore, it was alluded to the impact of COVID-19, and we're all very much alive to the real effect of it on ourselves as persons and on the government and on society in general. GMT in particular is the custodian of an extensive fleet that is that it manages. That would require a constant, intensive, the protocols of that is being imposed upon us as a result of the pandemic to sanitize and do all sorts of things. And my question is particularly linked to the sanitization of the fleet and what the cost implication would be for the department in this particular coming year. And then on page 77, Chair, just this question of clarity, and I appreciate the format in which the department presented that, and I think for both GMT as well as the department, it is very similar. Is what is the difference between formal and informal bids? I don't have in my head an understanding of what those differences are. And then, Chair, lastly, on page 15, to go back again, there's a list of outstanding debts of clients, and amongst those are quite a number of national departments, and some of them, like the Department of Justice and others, owe the the entity and the department quite a lot of money. What is the situation in terms of, those departments who have outstanding debts with the department as to them paying, and what measures are being put in place to ensure the recovery of those debts? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable America. Honorable Ngondlo.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to the Minister, the HOD, and his team, and compliments to them of the new season, and all the best for this year. Chair, I think the aspect I think from Member America, or the notion of appreciating the great work of arriving at clean audits, I think must be followed, and I want to join him for the department and GMT. It's appreciated, especially in these current challenges of public financing, given our economic environment. I think that is something to really give due to the leadership of the department and GMT. Having said that, Chair, perhaps I want to deal with maybe starting with GMT around this risk, and I see this risk is in both. It's actually like written the same in both GMT and the department. There are emerging risks. And my interest, I think, is on the issue. Honorable America has dealt with the skills part, because I would be interested. I think he has dealt with many of the issues on which areas seems to be the biggest challenges in terms of the type of skills that seems to be a challenge for the department, and are those that are part of the national critical or scarce skills list as per the Department of Higher Education, and what are some of the measures that are in place to try and recruit or develop those skills from the department and both GMT side. And in addition, Chair, on the risk, I see from the GMT side, the Transport Violence and Criminal Act. I just maybe if they can elaborate more in their environment, what would this mean, and how they have dealt in mitigating of that particular risk. I could pick up, for example, in the annual report of the department as an example that there is one vehicle that was stolen, which I think speaks to the Criminal Act aspect. But I had asked, I think, during our engagement with the AG and the internal audit, perhaps I'll get the answer here to the department, that would I be correct or incorrect to expect that issues like illegal invasions of public land, given that that is part of the portfolio of the department, some of the protests that leads to litigations, in terms of the contestations about, when the disposals are done, will those part of what I was provided to as a response, would those form part of operational risks? Because I would have thought that similar to the situation of COVID, I think we have been seeing this new trend, especially in our province, of invasions. And I think Minister has spoken a lot about this particular issue in public platforms and even in the House in terms of his speeches. But one does not see this as one of the emerging risks. Perhaps it's me who's misunderstanding it in context, especially of the department. And then the other question, Chair, in as far as the Triple BE, page 84 and page 198 of the department. And I'm raising this question because I think as the last department, this is one consistent issue we've been trying to seek clarity on. And one looks at the response of that table of the 5-measure question. And I'm interested to both GMT to just respond to it and also the department that I think in line with the explanation given by Treasury yesterday, would one then in this context assume that the department is then has taken a decision and not to apply the Triple BE, in its current form, opting for what was explained as discretion. So utilizing this provincial treasury instructions, as I think is alluded to in the discussion column of that particular table. I just want to get that particular sense from the department and also from GMT in terms of their stance, which I think was also answered by both Premier and Minister Mayor, also to include a position of the party policy and also a conference resolution. So I just want to get that understanding, Chair, in as far as those are concerned. And my last one, Chair. Oh, I think that was my last one. My apologies.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkondlo. Department.
HOD?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Honourable Chair, Minister, thank you very much for the questions that have been posed. A few of them I will ask for some assistance from members of the team that are included in the meeting this morning. But perhaps let me first say just thank you very much, of course, for the acknowledgement of the work of the department. It is appreciated. The team does put in a large effort to try to ensure that we receive these types of results for a department in this province. As then the first question linked to the skill aspects, I'll pick up on that one. The questions that have been posed around the sanitization of the fleet and the protocols, I'm just trying to give a sense to the team to whom I'm going to direct them to. I will direct that one through to Mr. Ahmed on the GMT side. The difference between formal and informal bids, I'll ask Advocate Smith to deal with. I will then also pick up on the date matter, and then on some of the risk aspects I will respond, and where I need to I may call in some additional backup. So as the starting point from my side, the question around what are we doing to deal with succession planning and the critical skills, if I may, through you, Chair, bring the response together through to Honourable America and Honourable Member Nkondlo for the two aspects. The department has got a number of programs in place. From the first point of view around attracting skills, the committee would be aware, and members of the committee, around the Misaki Sizwe bursary program that we have been running now for many, many years, around trying to bring young people in to study, particularly in the built sector fields, which for our department has been and remains a scarce skill. And certainly engineers, quantity surveyors and others you would see on the national list in terms of scarce skills. So we continue that program and then bring in with that the professional development program, where we try to create the opportunities and the environment where graduates who have then been appointed by the department are provided all the necessary support, exposure and so on, so that they can in as short a time as possible register with their relevant professional bodies, be it the Engineering Council of South Africa or the Quantity Surveying Councils, etc. And that they are then embedded in the department and start to gain the kind of experience and exposure and add then to a growing group of young professionals within the department. What then is important, of course, as you mentioned, with an older grouping of the professionals and the older, not only professionals, but older cadre of our departmental staff, is putting in place programs where they can transfer knowledge and experience. And our knowledge management team in the department has spent a lot of time focusing on this, putting in place and trying to formulate mentorship programs. So there is ability to transfer and support younger people through the department from the older grouping. We also have now recently started a program this year about learning from leavers, and ask people who are nearing the end of their time within the department to be open and put in place, whether it's little video clips, have sessions talking with the team, with the staff, to be able to transfer their knowledge and their experience. Very often I get told by some of our older staff that, you know, everything up until the pandemic, I must just qualify that, that everything that we've gone through, there's nothing new. It's been seen before. And so it's very important that we learn from what happened previously, what was done, what worked, what didn't work, and we bring that in to try to understand that and focus our attention. We also then have got the general internal bursary program, where we try to create opportunities for staff within the department to be able to expand, grow their knowledge, and be able to then respond accordingly to opportunities that arise within the department. The risk that we articulated that risk some time ago, and it has been a strategic risk for the department about attracting, recruiting, and so on, because we have found that in the years gone by, we have landed up competing substantially with the private sector. In some respects, and it's horrific to say so, if I may, but the environment now, from an economic point of view, and what private companies are going through, many within the built sector have landed up reducing staff, reducing salaries, retrenching staff. And so there is actually an opportunity, and with any crisis there are opportunities for us to be able to try and attract the critical skills back into the government space that are necessary, particularly in those particular groupings. We do also, if I may, just in the final point to it, as far as succession planning, it is something within our roads branch, for example, that there is a specific consideration and approach being taken over the last few years, with now the new organizational structure, to be able to create the opportunities for us to bring a younger grouping through, give them the responsibility while our older team are still here before they move off in terms of retirement. And where we need to, we've kept some of our almost retirees on to make sure that we've got that opportunity to transfer the knowledge and experience to our younger team. Linked to that, so certainly the challenge from the types of skills, I would say, as I've mentioned, the built sector side of things, but certainly also in some of our focus areas. If you're thinking about grader operators, very often it's not thought about. A particular skill set within the road work environment, the physical working side of things, those are often skills that are not necessarily easily available. And that then links to the program in the community-based program, the EPWP team, around the National Youth Service, the apprenticeship programs, and others, where we're then trying to build opportunities for developing those skill sets, so that we have a pool of people that we can look for the department. Then the question about the industries, and to get a sense about our views from the kind of economic hardships and the industries that impact on our department. So clearly within the construction sector, over the last few years, and then clearly as we've gone through and continue to go through the pandemic. If you might recall, a number of the construction industries, construction companies, some of them actually increased their footprint and started working internationally. So South African-based firms that then started to have a footprint internationally, and that impacted some of them. Some of those business decisions that they took were not necessarily the best ones. That had an impact on them, which then meant that the South African business was at risk. And then there is also the point that in some instances, if we're thinking about it, some of the companies clearly being exposed from a national point of view within South Africa, some of their projects put them at risk, and just generally a downturn in that particular sector. That means if those industries are struggling, we have to be extra careful and aware before we're looking at what companies we're appointing as contractors for the department. The other industry that we spoke about that was linked to particularly COVID was within the transport side of things. When we had the high levels in terms of the lockdown levels, the limitations from a capacity point of view that vehicles could be able to transport people, that also then has a particular impact and knock on right through those specific industries. So it was really those, I would say, as the core main areas that we identified that in turn then impact and can have an impact on DTPW's work. Then I'm going to leave the point around the fleet management and so on through to Mr. Ahmed, and the informal bids through to Advocate Smith. As far as the outstanding debts to clients, I can indicate that that is a snapshot in time because GMT works in accrual accounting. That's as of the end of March. Most of those invoices or the outstanding debt classified as debt is then paid in April, May within the necessary timeframes. So it's not something that it's debt from a months and months and months necessarily. So given that they're on a slightly different accounting, well, on a, I suppose, a substantially different accounting process to us as modified cash, that is what it is. It's literally a snapshot in time. Mr. Ahmed might be able to add to that if he feels I haven't done it sufficient justice. Then on the, through you, Chair, the question also then about the risks, transport violence and criminal acts, and just to also say that you'll see these things being the same in both GMT and the department, because GMT as a trading entity is part of the administration of DTPW, so they are linked. But this is one of our strategic risks as a department, and the impact is on a potential loss from an asset point of view. There have been instances where there are violent protest or protest action, and departments clearly have got staff that are operating and working in some of those areas, where we then have landed up that our GMT, the vehicles that are used by those departments, land up being potentially stoned or damaged through those protests, through the protest action, and clearly that has an impact. There is also the aspect around the safety of our staff when they're moving through areas or involved and happen to be doing work in some of those areas where they're on site and others. The aspect then as well, which member and Conlo through your chair has asked around the land invasions and so on, that has been picked up within Program 2 within the Provincial Public Works Program Risk Register, and it is listed there and focused upon in terms of the responses that are needed in that particular aspect. So I wouldn't say that they're not at an operational risk level, they are sitting at a program level that the OMCO then does also consider and start to unpack and try and find ways to respond to. The point then around the BBBEE, my opening remark to say is, as a department, we are required to follow the Provincial Treasury instructions that are issued in terms of the approach that we take. And then I would also then just indicate, of course, that from a departmental point of view, certainly as has been captured in the report, just close on 74% of our infrastructure spend has been directed to triple BEE company levels 1 and 2, with close on 65% going to level 1 triple BEE compliant companies or responsive companies. But I'm sure Advocate Smith may like to add a little bit more to that response. So through you, Chair, if I may ask Mr. Ahmed to pick up on the GMT matter, and then for Advocate Smith to pick up on the informal and formal bid aspects as well. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you, HOD. Chair, through you. Firstly, the HOD covered the question with regards to the outstanding debt perfectly. I don't think there's anything else that I can add to that. And also the question with regards to the risk to our assets, that would include GMT's vehicle assets when there are service delivery protests, when the vehicles are targeted. And GMT, of course, has had to respond to assist clients in protecting GMT's assets, but also, as the HOD indicated, the personnel who make use of these vehicles. And we are, of course, particularly concerned about traffic personnel and EMS personnel who have been targeted and their security has been at risk. So that is work in progress in how GMT can assist to just with the vehicles make it safer for the personnel. With regards to the question around the expenditure on sanitizing, Chair, through you, of course, in the financial year that's currently under review in this annual report, in 2019-20, we did not have specific expenditure with regards to deep sanitizing in response to COVID. I can say that as at the beginning of this current financial year that we are in, we do have a separate tracking that we are tracking sanitizing costs or expenditure separately, and we will be able to account for that at the end of this financial year. I don't have the numbers with me in terms of how much we've spent to date, but certainly we will be able to extract that. But for the 2019-20 financial year, there wasn't a differentiation between the regular cleaning that we have of the vehicles and the deep sanitizing or the alcohol-based sanitizing of vehicles prior to the lockdown. There was a circular that we sent out as GMT to all of our clients at the start of lockdown on the 26th of March. On the 25th of March, we sent a circular to clients to advise them that for the sake of safety of personnel, that vehicles would be sanitized, deep sanitized on a regular basis, especially, of course, the ambulances and other first responder vehicles in our fleet. I hope that covers that, Chair. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much. Advocate Smith.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Through you, Chair, the difference between formal and informal bids. Formal bids refers to what we traditionally understand as the written tenders with the extensive tender documentation and the proof required, whereas informal bids refers to our quotation systems. In other words, picking up the phone and getting 3 quotes, which is then confirmed in writing, and utilizing what is known as the IPS, the internet-based purchasing system, which is a quotation system developed and implemented through the Provincial Treasury. That's the difference between the two. And then the second aspect on BEE, just to add, that in infrastructure, the pre-qualification as well as the subcontracting arrangement is also not needed, as the sector itself is organized in such a way that it facilitates subcontracting in and of itself. In addition, the members would recall we have explained before that we do undertake an empowerment impact assessment in order for us to determine exactly what portion of the work is capable of being subcontracted. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much. I think we have completed the questions that were posed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, HOD. Maybe just a follow-up from my side, raising it maybe because it's the last department that we are dealing with, especially on this issue of broad-based Black economic empowerment. I think the HOD's response alluded to the effect that there's a provincial policy on procurement. Now, I just want to check between the HOD as well as the CFO, how is this procurement policy different from the PE policy?
Through you, Chair, I will ask that Advocate Smith respond to that. I think she has got far greater ability to indicate as such. My response was in respect of the Provincial Treasury instruction that was issued. Advocate Smith, over to you.
Maybe before, Chair, can I add another question so that she can answer one?
No problem.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to understand on the aspect that Advocate was talking about, the pre-qualification. Is she referring to the CIDB grading system as the province taking it as a pre-qualification on its own? Is that what she means?
Thank you, Chair. Can I respond?
Yes, Advocate.
Okay, so on the question asked by you, Chair, about the difference of the provincial procurement policy, we are not referring to a provincial procurement policy. We are referring to a specific policy taken on preferential procurement, on the uniformed implementation of preferential procurement in the province, which is very specific, which is not a general procurement policy which specifically refers on how one particular piece of legislation within the procurement framework will be applied in a uniform manner in the province. So that's the answer to that question. Member Nkonlo's question then refers to the grading of the CIDB. Chair, no, the provincial policy doesn't specifically address the CIDB. What I've said is the provincial policy specifically exercise or gives an indication through the Provincial Treasury instructions as to how the two discretionary pieces in the Act will be applied. The one referring to pre-qualification, in other words, that this province won't apply pre-qualification. And the second part of it is that the 30% subcontracting rule will not be applied unless there was a empowerment impact assessment then undertaken, which in general we do. In infrastructure, and that was my response, the infrastructure sector has been set up, one, to pre-qualify itself in the grading system, as your understanding is correct as far as that is concerned, that if you are in a particular class of work or a particular level, there's only certain work that you are capable of doing and that the province can therefore engage you to do. That's the first part. The second part is then that in infrastructure, the nature of the work lends itself to only a certain portion of that particular job being capable of being subcontracted. And that's what I meant in the infrastructure space. I hope that clarifies my response, Chair.
Thanks very much, Advocate. Any further questions or points of clarity or follow-ups, Honorable Nkonlo?
No, thanks, Chair, and thank you for the response of the Advocate. And I think one, perhaps in the resolutions, maybe a more explanation would assist one to understand in particular, because I was referring to the second aspect, which is the infrastructure that she was referring to, because I'm trying to understand the intentions of the BBB Act, the pre-qualification concept in realizing that, and how the grading system actually harmonize that, because I think BBBE specifies, groupings, and grading talks about the level of one entering the construction space, which does not necessarily refer to the economic status of those individuals, which is what BBBE pre-qualification tries to achieve. So that is why I'm saying, perhaps so that I don't belabor the point, maybe on the side, and maybe if the department can agree, to help, maybe advocate can actually do a write-up that will help for one to understand, in particular in the infrastructure. And I just want to sit on this grading, which is something that at least I'm familiar with, and she has been in most of the meetings, trying to explain. So that's one issue, Chair. And then moving on this point, Chair, I think there were two issues I just wanted to check with the department and GMT. I think partly covered the issue of the COVID health and safety, but I think it's on the fraud and corruption. I just want to understand, when one looks at the issue of the number of fraud cases in the department, but also in the GMT, and just to raise a concern and perhaps get clarity from the department, that is that something that is sort of worrying in the department in terms of the number of cases. Whilst I appreciate that there is a report of the investigation of those cases in as far as the portfolio is concerned, I think I'm looking at what at this point may be, some of the causes. Are we having any system or control challenges in the department as it relates to our fraud environment, fraud and corruption environment, both, I think, in the GMT? Thank you, Chair.
Do you like to have responses on that? Oh, okay, yes. HOD?
I certainly can give a response, Chair, if you're comfortable.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So just again, please, I'd like to just clarify that the report that you see in relation to the number of cases from a fraud perspective that you see in the DTBW annual report, as well as the GMT annual report, is exactly the same. It is the full number in terms of DTBW, so it is not a doubling up. So please don't think that GMT also started with 6 cases as well as the department. It is 6 cases that were of fraud that were carried over into the year under review. There were 4 that were in new cases and 5 closed, and that covers DTBW plus GMT if there were any allegations of fraud with GMT. So, and as it stood actually in terms of the open cases that there were, none of those, from what I've got in terms of the schedule in front of me, were linked to GMT at all. And then the 4 new cases that were lodged were also not linked to GMT. So they are ultimately all sitting within DTBW, but GMT sits within our administration. And then to respond in terms of areas of control, absolutely, we do have controls in place. A number of the cases that were referred to the Provincial Forensic Services were departmental referrals. So they were matters that were picked up through the controls in place and referred through to PFS for investigation. And then to also indicate that I think given the nature of the environment of our department, which is a supply chain intensive one, as the committee would be aware, the potential risks that we have identified within the department that are potential opportunities for fraud risk, that we have then been able to consider, whether it is in the supply chain side, whether it's within provincial traffic, because that is clearly a risk often, and you would see about it potential bribery of officers and so on that you see happening within the country, and then clearly some of the aspects around, from our point of view, potentially in the motor vehicle licensing environment linked to the municipalities, and we've seen that with those aspects. So I do believe that our controls are in place. The fact that we are able to pick up a lot of the matters is, I think, a testimony to that. It is not to say that everything that is then investigated actually has an outcome or a positive finding of fraud. It may be that there is an irregularity that's been identified, but not necessarily fraud. And in some instances, a number of the reports that we get back from PFS indicate that there is nothing, no irregularities that have been identified. So through you, Chair, I hope I have given a sense that, number one, it isn't a massive risk across both GMT and the department, and certainly the controls are in place. And that we then aim where we identify and there is a breach, we then look at what do we have to put in place in order to strengthen the control environment. And then also just a final point, if I may, that certainly when I've spoken about the vehicle licensing aspects and others, as a department, and you would have picked it up in some of the other areas of the report, we also then have a strong relationship with the South African Police Services, with the National Prosecuting Authority. We work with the Hawks and others in trying to deal with potential allegations and aspects around potential corruption or fraud in the motor vehicle licensing section. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, HOD. Honorable members, if there are no further questions on this section, I would like us to move to section E of the report of both the department and GMT. Section E of the report, Honorable America, Honorable Nkondlo, in that order, honorable members. Look like it's the Honorable Nkondlo and Honorable America show today. And they tend to sometimes also agree on matters today. Honorable America.
Okay, Chair, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Chair. The first question I'd like to ask for clarity purposes, Chair, is on page 175 of GMT, note 35.2 and 35.4. Let me just repeat, 35.2.4 and 35.2.5. Just for clarity purposes, is that really for Chair, for disclosure purposes, or you know, is there a particular clarity that you know, can be provided to contextualize that disclosure in particular? And then secondly, I'd like to congratulate the department and GMT for zero irregular, unauthorized and wasteful expenditure. That is quite a mean feat, you know, that GMT in particular has absolutely zero unauthorized, irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And then I'd like to move to the department, Chair. As I was saying earlier, is that it was quite a pleasure to go through this report, because it is very clear in terms of the revenue and expenditure. But what struck me most is that in terms of the expenditure for 3 programs, in terms of the budgeted amount, is precise to the rand in relation to the expenditure amount. It's the first time that I come across something like that, and maybe I've just missed interpret that presentation, because there's no variances in terms of the budget amount and the expenditure.
Which page is that, Honorable America?
Okay, I think it is page 245 in the department's book.
245.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
It's just let me just get to it quickly. Page 245. It just made the summary of the different expenditure of the program and the revenue. That presentation there on page 245. For example, program 1 administration, the actual expenditure is 305.6 million. The expenditure in relation to that, the final preparation is the same, and similarly for program 5 and program 6. It just, it just struck me that, I mean, with such accurate budgeting, it's quite remarkable. Secondly, Chair, I've posed the question to the AG's office with regard to services rendered in kind to other departments, and we received a quite adequate explanation of why the services rendered to other departments had not been quantified, and it is in terms of certain sort of accounting and disclosure and GRAP requirements, and it's quite satisfying, that kind of explanation. Then, Chair, I'd like to just mention about there's a significant over-collection as far as revenue is concerned, and that revenue over-collection is largely as a result of motor vehicle licenses. Now, we know with the pandemic how it impacted on the ability of vehicle owners to renew their licenses. So my question is, what is the expectation of and what's the anticipated collection rate of motor vehicle license fees this current year up to, I'm sure it cannot be fully sort of responded to in terms of accuracy, but is there an anticipation that it will be significantly lower than the previous financial year? And then, Chair, note 10 point on page 309. 309, it relates to transfers to municipalities. I think if my memory serves me correct, it relates to transfers to municipalities, and I don't fully understand that. Let me just go to the page quickly. 305. Note 10.1. Let me just see there. Oh, got it wrong here. Sorry. Note 10.1. Let me go. Sorry, Chair, for the. No problem. 10.1 advances paid to municipalities. The district municipalities, 17 million rand. The balance of the previous year. And then there's an additional amount for the current financial year of 19.1 million rand. And then furthermore, then there's a schedule in terms of the district municipalities to which those amounts those advances were paid. Can I perhaps just get a little more clarity in terms of those transfers to municipalities? Because I don't fully, understand that now. And for now, Chair, perhaps I can we'll leave it at that, and hopefully I will add a further question later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable America. Honorable Ngondo.
No, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I must say it's an interesting observation, which I will tell Honorable America one day about, our level of agreement and the extent of disagreement, and what I posit could be the reason. But I want to once again join him and as if he read my mind, to applaud the department about no authorized, no irregular expenditure, as it's indicated in their in section C, E in their financial statements. I think it must be applauded, because I think it's somewhat not an easy sailing through for all the other departments. I think it's something to be commended. And also I think do my political work to also commend the department and the minister around slump in road fatalities, I think for the last year, and I'm sure COVID played a role, but I think we must commend the efforts of the department whilst we consider how such can be the case also for the farm workers. Let me then, Chair, without wasting time, my questions on E, I just wanted to check from the department if we look at page, I think it's 155 of their annual report. In as far, the first thing I wanted to check under 17.2 is the issue of investments. And it's more a clarity-seeking question, Chair, because I would like to understand. I see that there are a number of investments with Nedbank, the ABSAs, maybe just to give me an understanding of what these investments are, just as clarity for my side. And then I think on page 158, Chair, I just want to understand what prompted this spend if one looks at the previous financial year and the current reporting, of the OPEX system and architecture, because I see the amounts move from 271 to 1318, and then on the system architecture and integration from 117 to 2631. If maybe I can get clarity around that. And then on page 164 of the department, also I think I see there in terms of PPE, and it's just a confirmation and perhaps more clarity, because I would assume that was compounded by the COVID spend. I see from 987 in the previous year to almost 35.062. Is that the case? And perhaps what were the big areas of spend in the COVID from the department? And I know we've received, I think, in the ad hoc committee some of those reports, but I just want to understand what has triggered this. And also I see also under 28.11 and 28.12 notes, also there's another PPE addition cost, and perhaps if you can clarify and contextualize this in relation to the question that I was asking on page 164. And then on 165, on the contingent liabilities, Chair, I see, I think the department indicates there that at this point there is no necessarily provision made when they are explaining, I think, one of the claims. And I just want to understand, is it because the matter is still not concluded, and based on that, the department may not be aware of what would be the quantum if the case may be against the department. I'm just trying to get a sense about the provision of such not being made in terms of the department chair. Yeah, I think those are my questions, Chair, for this round. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Honorable Ngondlo. Department.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the questions. For many of the GMT questions that have been asked, I am going to request that Mr. Rian Wiggle provides the response, but I'll direct him to that in a moment. I'll then start, if I can, the question on page 175, the indication of the details that have been provided. That's in line with the GRAP disclosure requirement. And so it is really an accounting requirement that that disclosure is provided in the financials. Then the question about the precision between the budget and the expenditure, or the final appropriation, if I could say, and the expenditure. The department spent 99.9% of its budget. So on leaving a variance then of just over 10 million rand out of the budget of 8.7 billion. So there you will find that the final appropriation after the environments that have been done will be the same for many of the programs as the final expenditure that was attached, so that we were able to, within all of the necessary rules, shift money between the various programs, and you will therefore see the numbers equating at that particular level. So there wasn't much left for the department to still try and spend in the year that passed. Then the motor vehicle license fee revenue collection and so on. In terms of your question about the current financial year, we are cautiously optimistic that we may break even or be very close to the anticipated revenue amount for the current financial year. We are not expecting an over collection for the 2020-21 financial year, and we are pursuing, as I've previously mentioned to members of the committee and in the Transport and Public Works Standing Committee, various agreements with the Post Office, the RTMC and others to allow people to apply online and access a different way so that they can be more easily served than necessarily standing in queues at a municipal office. So we anticipate, we're cautiously optimistic, we anticipate a break even. Particularly, it does depend on what happens in February and in March. The question then relating to the Department of Transport's financials and Public Works financials on page 309, and the question about the transfers to the municipalities. The finance team are more than welcome to butt in if I'm about to give the wrong answer, but my understanding of it, that's listed here on page 309, is that our agreements with the district municipalities as our agents to deliver on the road maintenance program provide for an advance to be paid to them so that they're therefore able to pay staff, purchase materials, etc., and then that is dealt with through the year as we get a sense of what their claims are, what they've actually spent, and then further funds are transferred. So these are not what you would see as normal transfers in the usual context of transfers. These are ultimately payments to the district municipality to deliver on the roads agency function for the department. So I hope that that gives you a sense. And clearly at the end of March, There is funds, money still left for all intents and purposes, because remember the municipality's financial year only ends at the end of June. So there's an indication of an amount, therefore, at the end of March. If I have misspoken, please, to my DPW team, you are more than welcome to butt in and make sure that you correct me so I'm not misleading the committee in any way, shape or form. Then, through you, Chair, to Honourable Member Nkondlo's questions linked to specifically all the various notes in GMT. If I've got them correctly, it's note 17.2 about the investments, note 22 about the costs linked to the system architecture and others, then also linked to the plant, property and equipment, PPE. In that context is plant, property and equipment, not personal protective equipment necessarily, but I'll leave that for Rian to explain. And then also the question linked to note 31.1 about the contingent liability. So through you, Chair, if I may, I will hand over through to Mr. Rian Wiggle. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll start off with the contingent liabilities. So the contingent liabilities are not recognized on the balance sheet of GMT because that's according to the accounting standard in play. In this specific case, it's GRAP 19, which deals with contingent liabilities. So basically what it comes down to, there's uncertainty about the amount or the timing of that event, or whether it's going to be realized. So it would be inappropriate to recognize that on the balance sheet, and that's why it's merely disclosed as a disclosure item on the financials. Chairperson, there was a question on note 17.2 on the interest earned on investments. So what we do from a cash flow perspective, we have estimates for the financial year, and basically we look at when cash is needed during certain periods during a financial year. And when there's cash not immediately needed, it would be prudent to invest that at higher rates. So just to indicate this, as if you look at note 17.1, let's say the cash is left in the main account, those interest rates would be 14.75 to 6.25%. But if we actually invest cash not immediately needed, then those rates go up to, let's call it 8.24 to 8.87. And given the amounts that's involved in the investment amounts, it makes a lot of sense for us to basically invest it. So the approach to this process would be is we contact the Provincial Treasury and they go to market to the financial institutions and obtain quotes. So you would see that ABSA and Nedbank, all the, let's call it main banks, are approached, and merely the cash is invested at that specific stage at the financial institution, which basically tenders the highest interest rate. Chairperson, note 22 on numbered page 159, the increase in the, let's call it the architecture spend. We had to position GMT in such a way to basically for the rollout of its strategy, for its current strategy. And when we look at the specific accounting standards involved, it's GRAP 31, which deals with intangible assets. And also GRAP 1, which is basically the overarching accounting standard, which actually talks about when you recognize the asset or when you recognize the expenditure and what's the requirements for those. And this specific expenditure that you would see over here was towards the, let's call it the approach of the strategy and the positioning of the strategy for the entity. And there were expenses at that specific stage which didn't meet the recognition criteria according to GRAP 1 and 31 that I've just alluded to now. And that's why you would see that it has increased from the 18-19 financial year. And there are actually quite a few of those items and line items specified like that. We specified according to the nature of the specific expenditure. It is also a requirement as contained in GRAP 1. And that's why you would see multiple line items that describe that specific expenditure. Chairperson, I must admit, can we just maybe ask the member to repeat the question on note 28, please, if you don't mind.
Note 28. Honorable Nkondlo. That was Honorable Nkondlo, ne?
It was through you, Chair. If I may, perhaps I may be able to assist Mr. Wiggle.
Okay, sure.
The question that was posed was linked to the increase in the PPE aspect, if I recall correctly. So specifically under the point of, I think it was 28.11, there is a statement saying carrying value of PPE disposals, and links note 7. For 1920, it was 35 million and restated in 18, 99.8 million. And I think there was a question about the substantial difference from one year to the next, and asking what's caused that. I trust through you, Chair, I hope I've managed to pick up Honourable Member Nkondlo's question correctly.
Most definitely, HOD. Thank you.
Chairperson, yes, thank you. So basically, if you look at the PPE disposals during the financial year of the 1920 financial year, we've had 752 vehicles that were disposed at a estimated total disposal cost of, I've got the number here at hand, it is basically 57.4 million. So that's an increase from the comparative year, and basically it was due to the number of vehicles that was disposed during the financial year.
Chair, I think we've covered
Honourable
the question.
Nkondlo, you following up? Or is it the previous?
No, Chair. HOD has covered me.
Okay. Thank you. Honourable America.
Chair, I don't think that one of my questions we responded to, and that is 35 GMT, note 35.2.4 and 2.5. Just an explanation around that particular disclosure, because it's not always clear. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I did indicate in my initial response that that particular note is put down in line with the GRAP standard. You asked whether there was any particular intent behind it. And from a departmental point of view, we are required from a GRAP standard perspective to disclose that information.
Okay, thank you, HOD.
Thank you.
Any further question, honourable members? Further follow-ups?
Yes, Mad Chair.
You were saying, Honourable America?
It's as clear as mud. Thank you, Chair.
It's mud. I thought mud is.
I was just saying it's clear as mud.
Just almost in line with what we have raised previously about the precision of the department in terms of its financial management, Honourable America. Maybe because if you go to on page 179 of the GMT report, of course, while we've been asking questions, maybe it might be good that maybe some time we may also make use of the opportunity to share some of these good practices, because it says there on page 179, unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. When it comes to unauthorized, it says, to the best of management's knowledge, no unauthorized expenditure was incurred during the year under review. Fruitful, and wasteful expenditure, I think it says the same as well as irregular. I don't know, maybe the CFO or the department can answer this. How do you achieve this? Just as a way of sharing good practice, not always all the time us asking all the time asking you difficult questions. I know it's in line with what was raised by other members.
Through you, Chair, I don't think that there is a fancy formula to it. I think it is on the basis of incredibly dedicated people who are committed to ensuring that we follow what the law says, that we follow what the rules are, that we understand how the system that we operate within works and how to utilize that in order to achieve the outcomes that we have said we will for the citizens of our province. So it's really on the back of people knowing their environment and knowing the work that they do. If there are any questions they ask, they don't just go ahead and do something and then go, oops, sorry, we've made a mistake, now we have to fix it. If there are any issues, they then raise their hand and say, please assist, provide some guidance, give input, and that where necessary, we bring different parts of the department together with officials with different expertise to be able to brainstorm, consider what's required, and find the best way to achieve it. So often I may say, oh, I believe we need to do X. But then somebody will say, well, HOD, actually, we can achieve what you want, but in a different way that will ensure that we follow all the necessary rules, all the necessary processes and procedures. And I think possibly on a lighter note, if I say, many of us are very scared of the CFO. So we want to make sure that we don't get called into account in her office. The CFO may wish to add through you, Chair.
CFO?
Thank you, Chair, but I have no further wisdom to add on this matter.
Okay, no, you know, I am not as good in praise singing as Honorable America is sometimes, but I think just accept that as my way of giving credit where credit is due. Now, as I said, that sometimes we always want to ask the difficult question, but it's always sometimes good to also maybe use the platform sometimes to share good practice and best practice and maybe go to understand and hear how those best practice have been achieved. I think maybe that's another way of dealing with accountability in a positive way. Now, honorable members, yes, HOD.
I just want to say I absolutely agree.
Okay. Now, honorable members, any further questions? Any form of clarity? The audit committee.
Chairperson.
Honorable Matoti.
Chairperson, that's me in my totality.
Honorable Maseko.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I don't have a question, but again, to congratulate the best HOD in the whole country and to say that we are really, really saluting the department under the leadership of Minister Madikizela. And we can't really say all the ways that we want to say because Chair will be here for the whole day of a Friday, but to say they are noted and they are appreciated more than they can ever think by the whole committee, talking also for Member Ngondo. Thank you, Chair.
Now, if there is no further question, honorable members, audit committee, is the audit committee still with us?
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Any issues or point you'd like to raise, maybe in view of the presentation and discussion that were taking place?
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I also just want to extend the thanks to the department and to GMT for all the hard work, and really for, you know, when we ask something to be clarified, that they come through with the necessary documents, and thanks for all the hard work. And also thank you to the AG for the report issued. And to the Honourable Minister for meeting with us when requested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Audit Committee. AG?
Thank you, Chair. And I think, Chair, from our side, we just want to extend our thanks to both the department and GNT for their support and assistance during the audit process. And it was really under very trying times that they assisted us very, very well. And we know they will continue on this trend of driving clean administration and preventative controls within both the department and entity. And from our side, we look forward to further engagement for the next audit cycle, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, AG. HOD?
Chair, thank you to the members of your committee and to the Audit Committee and the AG. If I can just say thank you very, very much. I do appreciate the positive feedback and the acknowledgement of the hard work of this team. It is a collective effort. I happen to sit here as the accounting officer, but lead an incredible group of people and need to acknowledge their inputs day in and day out. They make my life very easy, to be honest, although sometimes I do wonder. And I do need to also say to you as a committee, I appreciate once again, thank you, the opportunity. If there are any questions, if there are any issues, through you, Chair, to Honourable Member Nkondlo, but if I may make an offer that certainly if you would like to set up some time for us to sit and have an interaction to go into some more detail on some of your questions, you're also more than welcome to do so. Apologies for the noise outside the office window, and certainly we look forward to further engagements with the committee across the incoming financial year. Thank you.
Your HOD, knowing Honorable Nkondlo, she will definitely jump at that opportunity. She won't waste any time in jumping at it. Honorable Minister, maybe just maybe Honorable Minister, and also maybe in your closing remarks, I think the HOD indicated that this is I think it's the 8th clean audit. HOD, you say this is the clean audit for the 8th time? Eh?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Maybe, of course, maybe one of the things I would have said, but maybe I'll leave that to the minister. Now, we normally say that there is an unqualified audit and there's also the clean audit. Now, there should be something beyond clean audit. You might have all these clean audits on, but you will still find that there is service delivery that still needs to be done out there. It might be interesting, Minister, maybe in your closing remarks as to whether how do we address life beyond clean audit?
No, thank you very much.
Just as your parting shot.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson and the members of the Standing Committee. It's like you've read my mind, because even though I was not going to say it exactly in that way, I was going to just to react to some of the things that the committee members have said. Particularly, this is something that Member Nkondlo always lament on. I think we must be honest as this department that the issue of transformation is one of the issues that we need to drive. And the people must take all the credit, of course, for the good work at the officials. But at the same time, the executive authority or the minister or the MEC has a responsibility of creating an environment that is conducive for officials to be able to do their work. I should not be poking my nose in areas that are a competence of the accounting officer. But I have a responsibility to make sure that the constitutional mandate of this government is, and also the policies of this government are implemented and of course in line with the strategic goals of the national government, because we are part of one government. The issue of transformation is one of the issues that I talk to my officials on regular basis. We have to make sure that we address that. And I think Member Kondlo spoke about that. And even though we have some challenges, because if you look at the scarce skills, your engineers in particular, the many Black people are in short supply because we are competing with the private sector that is paying much more than us. But we are now making an effort working with the Department of Education so that we don't start to give bursaries from high school, Chairperson. We really encourage, our young people to take subjects that will give them the necessary skills that are needed by the economy at this level, so that we are able to give them bursaries and become part of the solution in terms of transformation. But secondly, if you look at the issues of Black economic empowerment or triple BEE, we might not like some of the aspect of the triple BEE, but we are compelled by the Constitution to address the historical imbalances of our country. And when we do that, we must do them in a manner that does not result in a situation where I must be hauled before the Zondo Commission tomorrow. So that is why I'm saying it is not my business to be calling my CFO or the HOD telling them who to appoint, but they must understand that we have moral obligation and constitutional obligation to transform the economy and to transform this department. And that is the conversation that I have with them on a regular basis. And I think in my role as the executive authority or the MEC chairperson and members, this is the point that I know I always drive. And I think while it is well and good, as you said, and the rest of the members, that we have this clean audit, going forward, these are the areas that we need to pay attention to. And at the same time, we are very much aware of the fact that given the shrinking fiscus and the fact that we will be experiencing budget cuts, which will impact on service delivery, we've got to make sure that really the issue of infrastructure-led growth and development and also transformation, these are the issues that we drive going forward. So that, as you said, Chairperson, we don't just tick boxes in terms of compliance so that we get the clean audit, but we also really delve into these bigger issues that are confronting us as a country. So having said that, I want to thank you very much for really always asking the right questions, keeping us on our toes, and really you must understand that whenever we engage with you, we go our way after this meeting, really worried about some of the things and try to put measures in place so that we can address them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Also, to further thank you and your department for the understanding and the flexibility that you have employed in accepting the change of time for this meeting. As you know, that the meeting was supposed to have been at 2 o'clock, but after the engagement with you, you were able to try as best as you can do to accommodate us. So thank you very much for that understanding as well. Let me also make use of the opportunity to thank the Audit Committee as well as the Auditor General. Audit Committee for the work that you have done in terms of making sure that at least our work in terms of accountability is a bit easier. Thank you very much for that. To the Auditor General for your always present, especially during the course of the week, since the beginning of the week. You have been consistently and constantly present in our meeting from the beginning right up until the end. That is highly appreciated. On behalf of the committee, I would like to say thank you very much, and I would like to continue having that relationship with you moving forward. I think that goes the same with the audit committee. Thank you very much. To the department as well, led by the minister, HOD, thank you very much for making the time and availing yourself to come and be available to be asked questions, sometimes not easy questions, difficult questions, and also awkward questions, but bear in mind that those are not intended to try and trick you or to catch you up, but just to make sure that we, as the Standing Committee on Public Account, we are actually fulfilling our role and responsibility of having to hold the executive to account. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. If it was maybe next month going to be election, I was going to say with the speech that you have made, you are actually campaigning to be elected. But thank you very much. So, but thank you very much. And then, as I've indicated, that some of the questions we are asking, they are in no way trying to trick you or catch you up, but want to make sure that we are playing our role in terms of holding the executive to account. Thank you very much for your cooperation as well. Thank you very much for always being available. We are actually looking forward to also having a very good relationship with you and your department throughout the year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, I think we have come almost to the end of this meeting, but before I end, I want to check with the procedural officer whether are there any members of the public that are present that have indicated that they would like to ask questions. If they are, we will allow them the opportunity to do so.
Chairperson, members, no, there was no indication from any members of the public to engage the department and the Committee on Transport and Public Works this afternoon.
Okay, then in the absence thereof, let me also make use of the opportunity, honorable members and ladies and gentlemen, to thank also the members of the Standing Committee on Public Account for their consistent attendance in the meeting. We've been starting this meeting since the beginning of the week from 8 o'clock, and they were scheduled to carry on right up until 7:30 in the evening. But because of their efficiency and their effectiveness, we've been able to most of the time finish some of the meetings on record time. And I think the latest we've really went on a meeting was about 5 o'clock because the or 5:30 because the meeting has started at 3:30. Thank you very much, members. I know I normally say that we don't have to praise the fishes for swimming, but really your dedication and your diligence during the week was very remarkable. Thank you very much. But also the unseen and the hidden, I normally say the hidden strength behind my performance, people that you don't see most of the time, which is the staff, especially the procedural officers in the form of Mr. Dustin David, as well as Lynette. They were doing a sterling work behind the scene that you have not been aware of, and it's them that have actually made sure that we have run most of this meeting from the beginning so smoothly, and also to the IT department as well. They've done a sterling work, and I would like to say well done to them. Thank you very much.
So, Chair, Ms. Lizette Kluter, not Lynette.
Oh, apologies, I'm going to pay for that. Lizette, thank you very much, Mrs. Lizette Klute. My apologies for the mispronunciation. It was just the slip of the tongue. They've done a stunning.
Thank you, Chairperson.
They've done a stunning work.
Chair, as well as the IT personnel who were dedicated to ensuring that we could utilize this platform optimally, and particularly consistent play with Mr. Shiraza Sam.
is I did mention the IT and thank them there. As you can see that most of our meetings were run very smoothly and there have been no hiccups. If there were hiccups, they were able to come in. Thank you very much for that work. And the Department of Transport and Public Work was the last to come in. Thank you very much. Now we have come to a point whereby I would like to release the department as well as the audit committee and the auditor general, so that as the standing committee on public accounts, we can continue with the business of the committee. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You are now released.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Chair.